Welcome to our Math Success Night. My name is Rachel Feinstein. I'm the secondary math TOSA for the Santa Clara Unified School District, and I'll be getting us started this evening. Our agenda for this evening is to review our current pathways, look at the changes being made to the placement process for this year's students, the implications for high school and beyond, and then supporting your students at home. Let's begin by thinking about what a pathway is. So in elementary school, we don't often talk about pathways because students don't have course choices like they do in high school and middle school. So when we refer to a pathway in middle school classes and in high school classes, what we're referring to is a sequence of courses students can take within one content area, but over the course of multiple years. So for example, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 would be considered one pathway of mathematics. So with that in mind, let's look at our current pathways in our district. So we're going to begin with our middle school pathways. So your middle school placement, as you know, begins in 5th grade. And the vast majority of our students in 5th grade end up taking Math 6 in 6th grade. However, we do assess students for placement in 5th grade, and we have some students who are able to skip Math 6 and go directly into Math 7. In 6th grade, our Math 6 students, the majority of them end up taking Math 7. The Math 7 students in 6th grade, the majority of those students end up taking Math 8. And again, we assess for placement. So students in Math 7 are also able in 6th grade to skip Math 8 and go directly into Algebra 1. And our Math 6 students are able to skip Math 7 and Math 8 and go directly into Algebra 1. It's important to note, however, that the students who skip Math 7 and 8 for Math 6 are very few and far between. We roughly, as a district, have between 20 to 30 students district-wide who are able to make that leap every year. So it's not a traditional pathway. Most students don't do that route, but it is an option. In 7th grade, most of our Math 7 students move into Math 8. All of our Algebra 1 students end up in Geometry, and all of our Math 8 students take Algebra 1. Again, however, we do assess students for placement. So our Math 7 students are able to skip Math 8 and go directly into Algebra 1. So you can see that those blue arrows kind of across the top row of your screen, that represents our traditional on grade level pathway. It is a rigorous pathway, and there's nothing wrong with taking on level classes all the way through high school. Okay. All the skipping that takes place in middle school is something that you as a parent should be really critically aware of, and it isn't best for every student. So even though we offer places where students can skip content, please be very critical in deciding whether or not that is best for your kid. The content in those courses is essential content moving forward. They don't learn it later. So it's just holes in their learning that do catch up with them when they're in high school. So for example, in 6th grade, students are introduced to and develop understanding of ratios. Ratios and proportional reasoning is one of the #1 indicators of success in high school mathematics. And we have students just skipping all of that content, okay? In Math 8, for example, students were introduced to geometric transformations. That's the basis of geometry. So that by the time they get to geometry, they're already slightly behind their peers, even though they get there sooner, okay? In Math 8, students are also introduced to the Pythagorean theorem and square roots for the first time, and not just square roots, but also cube roots. And so those things are needed in their future math classes. The entirety of trigonometry is based on the Pythagorean theorem, and we see many of our students in high school struggle because they skip Math 8, okay? So just because your student qualifies for the higher course doesn't mean it's the best option for them. And so keep that in mind when the district provides the placement for your student, okay? In high school, we have a variety of placement options for students, and the placement options are determined by their middle school placement. So all students in our district need to take Algebra 1, and from there, students end up taking Geometry. And after Geometry, students have choices that they can make in their math career. They do not need to test into one course, but there are choices that they can make as they move forward. So from Geometry, we traditionally see the majority of our students take Algebra 2 or Algebra 2 honors. However, this year we did add in a data science course to our pathway that I'm in particular really excited about, and we're going to talk more about data science in a minute. And so that course is an alternative to Algebra 2. It's a college prep course, and it should definitely be considered an option if you have a student who you know or who knows pretty strongly that they're absolutely not going into a STEM field. Okay. Students who take Algebra 2 then have 3 options of courses afterwards. So students who take Algebra 2 or Algebra 2 honors can then follow that course by taking data science. Traditionally, most of the students take trig or pre-calc honors. And then they also have the option to go from Algebra 2 honors to statistics or AP statistics. AP stands for Advanced Placement. Those are high school courses we offer that at the end have a test that they take. Students who pass the test can earn college credit for those courses, right? So if a student who passes the AP statistics test, for example, depending on the university or college they attend, they can earn units or college credit for that class. Okay. Students who take data science afterwards, their option is to go into statistics or AP statistics. Trig and our trig pre-calc students, again, they have some options. So the first and most traditional, I would say, is that students go from calculus to AP, calculus AB, which we would consider kind of that first semester of college calculus. And then those students can also, in trig pre-calc honors, also take statistics or AP statistics. And at Santa Clara High School, this option is not offered at Wilcox, but our Santa Clara High School students have the option to going from honors trig pre-calculus and directly into calc, AP calculus BC, which we would consider the second semester of calculus. So they review first semester, that AB course, and they also take second semester, which is the BC course. Okay, so again, that option with the star is only offered at Santa Clara High School. We do have some students who get to calculus AB as juniors. And so from there, they can decide to go into BC calculus or in statistics or into AP statistics. And then we also have seniors who dual enroll in courses. So we have students who do take as a senior calculus and statistics, for example. Okay, so I know that a lot of this, especially if you have a 5th grader, is pretty far out, right? We're not necessarily thinking about where they are as a 12th grader, but it's important for you as parents to just kind of understand the options moving forward for your student. As I mentioned earlier, I want to talk a little bit about that data science and statistics pathway. So when I was in school, or even my first couple of years teaching, there was really this notion that calculus was the higher math class and statistics was the lower math class, right? And the stronger students, the students who have more competitive college applications, you want them to go to calculus. But that has really shifted over the last couple of years. And so that's where data science kind of comes into play. So data science is an interdisciplinary field that incorporates mathematics, statistics, computer programming, and writing to make sense of the world. So we have students in those courses currently who are looking at huge data sets. They're using Excel in better ways than I know how to use Excel to really make meaning of what's happening around them. They're looking at things that interest them. They're working on presentation skills. They're public speaking in that class, all while doing really rigorous mathematics, right? So data science is considered just as rigorous as Algebra 2. It's just very different. It is not an easy math class. We don't think of it that way. It is a difficult course, just as Algebra 2 is a rigorous and difficult course. They're just very, very different. So think of it as the comparison between taking Spanish 2 or Japanese 2. They're both foreign languages, but they're significantly different languages, right? It's also important to note that data science is one of our fastest growing industries. So if you look not just in Santa Clara County, but California and nationwide, when they look at our fastest growing industries, and there's all those polls that go out, data science is almost always in the top 5 of all of those surveys, or all those results. So it's something to keep in mind as we as a district think about preparing our students for not just college, but college and career. And this addition of that data science course really speaks to that district value that we have. Universities and colleges are also really excited that high schools are implementing data science in their courses and have been releasing statements around their endorsement of this course and students taking it. So the Board of Admissions and Relations with Schools through the University of California system published a statement that says they just want students to go beyond the minimum requirement and take math classes that interest their own that pique their own interests, right? And so calculus shouldn't be viewed as the end all be all. Statistics, data science are all options that are valued in the similar way as calculus is. Harvard released a similar statement recently that calculus is neither a requirement nor a preference for admission to Harvard. I think that's a really powerful statement. And they say that rigorous and relevant data science, computer science, statistics, mathematical modeling, and other advanced math classes are given equal consideration, right? And so we see these statements coming out from colleges already, and every year more and more are released. Stanford recently released one as well. So if your student has no desire to be in the STEM field when they grow up, the data science and statistics pathway is a really good option for them and really rigorous in terms of the coursework. It's not an easy out course, okay? With that and with kind of all this information that I've gone through, it's pretty obvious that we need to make some changes to our current pathways, right? So not just because we have students skipping courses, but based on what colleges are saying, we need to think about the way our pathways are written, because they're really written with the intent of getting students to calculus, which is no longer what colleges are saying is necessary. Okay. Our current pathways in our district really push all the acceleration into middle school. So students who mature mathematically later in high school, if they choose to take calculus, they no longer have that option. And we want to build in some bridges for them there. And then also the entire pathway system that we have right now was really written for our top 15% of students to get to calculus. Right. And so we have 85% of the rest of our kids who need options that are not just skipping courses. And so with that in mind, we are looking for 15 parents with students in a variety of schools and courses to kind of join us in tackling this problem. If you are interested in joining the committee, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you to a Google form just to fill out just some personal information. It is a little bit of a time commitment. So we are going to meet on those 5 days. We will meet in person and we're going to meet at the Bookser Portables, which is, they're located in the parking lot between Bookser Middle School and Washington Open. Because we're looking for a diverse group of parents, we'll let you know at the end of the week if you've been selected. It's really just based on what course your student is in and what school. We want to make sure that we're including students from throughout the entire district in this process. Parents will be joining teachers, administrators, and counselors already on this committee to think through this together. We're not looking for parents who have any expertise in this. We'll give you a lot of information as we go through this learning journey together. It is not essential that you are a math whiz by any means. The more opinions and beliefs, the more robust our conversation will be. So I really, if you have the time, I would love for you to join us. We'll also have Spanish and Vietnamese translation available in these meetings. So with that, let's look at our changes to the placement process. So if you have an older student or you have friends with students who are older than your current student, they had a different placement process than your students have. And so I want to go through that quickly so you kind of understand what the changes are that are being made. The first is that in the old process, it was an opt-in process, and that opt-in started with a letter that was sent home with directions to opt in, and it was sent around this time of the school year. Students who didn't opt in, regardless of math ability, were automatically placed into Math 6. Those who did opt in were given the mathematics diagnostic testing project during their math class sometime in April. Okay. The results of that assessment were analyzed in 2 ways. The first is we looked at their overall score, and the second was we looked at their fraction subscore. From there, we saw the vast majority of our students still take Math 6, which is a rigorous on-level math class. However, we do have some students who are able to skip Math 6 and go directly into Math 7. It's roughly every year between 15 to 20% of our students. Last year was right in there. 17% of our students were able to go from Math 5 to Math 7. In this process, if students didn't qualify with the MDTP, the Mathematic Diagnostic Testing Project, based on their score, but they were pretty close to it, teachers were able to recommend students for Math 7 as well. In Middle school, the process was slightly different. So there was no opt-in process. All of our students in CC Math 6 and CC Math 7 took 2 assessments. The first was that mathematical diagnostic testing project assessment, and the second is that computational skills test assessment. And those scores together combined to determine placement. And again, if students were pretty close to the placement score cutoff, but not quite there, a teacher could recommend them to move into the higher level math course. So the following changes are going to be made to this placement process for this year, right? So these changes directly affect your current students. So maybe you had an older student who went through the old process, and again, that's all changing. So the first is that we are no longer using the mathematic diagnostic testing project assessment. We are going to replace kind of that assessment with an iReady, with their third or their spring iReady, the testing window for which is late February to early March or mid-March. And part of the reason for that is we want to use less class time. MDTP took roughly a math period. We already administer iReady and we want to utilize those scores. The second is that by using iReady, a test that everyone already takes, we are automatically eliminating the barrier for placement for students. Hey. I have to record the screencast again because what's her face made me change my slides.
If you need an objective, you absolutely need an objective.
Mm-hmm.
The objective is for people to learn about the math placement process.
Yeah, anyways, I'm almost done. No, you're good. Since iReady is a nationally distributed test and hundreds of thousands of students take that test nationally, iReady provides nationally normed cut scores for each course. So students who, based on iReady's statistics and data analysis of the content or of their assessment scores, if they're able to earn a certain score that tells teachers they're ready kind of to move on to Math 7. Students who are close to that score or exceed it will be given an additional 30-minute assessment to assess conceptual understanding and application of concepts. So all those scores together, not just the iReady score, but that additional 30-minute assessment will be combined to determine placement. And we're doing this for a few reasons. The first is that iReady does a really good job assessing procedure, right? So how do you add? How do you graph align? The how, right? Conceptual understanding addresses the why. So why does that work? And application addresses the when. When am I ever going to use this? And we know that students need all three of those things to really have a robust and strong understanding in mathematics. It's not enough to just know how to do something. Our computers, our calculators, the internet can give us the answer to every single question in our students' textbook, right? The how is much less important these days than it was even 10 years ago, because technology has come so far that it does a lot of the how for you. So students need to understand why things work and when you would use that thing. And so that additional assessment really pushes their thinking further. With that said, I'm going to hand off the presentation to my colleague, Mike, who's going to talk about implications for high school and beyond.
Hi, my name is Michael Fleur. I'm a counselor at Wilcox High School, and we'll be talking about the implications for math for high school and beyond. Why am I here? I'm a counselor. This is a math meeting. Well, I started in the district in 1994 as a counselor. And at that time, we didn't even have middle school parent meetings. So kids were rolling into high school, not really understanding where they were going. And they were just taking classes and they had to figure it out as they go. So we started having 8th grade meetings and kind of explaining 4-year planning and post-secondary planning to families and students. But by then, math was kind of set, and there were a lot of things that have already happened that people said, oh, I wish I would have known. So we now are deciding to go back into elementary school, which I think is a great idea, to start talking to parents and families about what post-secondary planning is. And then we're going to talk about tonight how math affects post-secondary planning. Math is linear in nature, where you're learning one skill on top of another, and you're building every year on your skill set. Well, you're about to go into math 6th, 7th, and 8th. That is foundational math. It's the math on which all your other math skills are built on. And we have to do well in that math. And we have to understand that we have to do well in math every year. And if we don't pick up skills along the way, that we could really suffer down the line. And so I want everybody to understand math is very linear, and 6th, 7th, and 8th math is very important. And then we'll see how that affects math while you're in high school. Families, the other thing I really want to talk about is families need to have long-term goals for their students. We call that a post-secondary goal. And we're going to spend some time on what a post-secondary goal is, because we don't want students and families closing doors on children's futures because they didn't know, right? Like, oh, if I would have known that was the effective decision A, I wouldn't have made it. So we're here now to say, hey, here are the implications for your decisions when it comes to math. So here we go. We talk a ton about post-secondary plans, and we started talking to middle school students about post-secondary plan, what you choose to do with your life after you finish high school. So before you start high school, we want you to have an idea of what your plan is for after high school, a post-secondary plan. You can change that post-secondary plan at any point along your journey, right? You basically have 5 choices in a post-secondary plan. You can go straight to work, not a great decision unless you already have a skill set. You can join the military. You can do a vocational school. You can do community college, and you can do a 4-year college. About 92% of students at Wilcox, between 90 and 92 in any given year, choose either community college or 4-year college. And so what we're starting to do now, and our thinking is now, we need to push this idea of post-secondary planning back to elementary school, right? So that as a 5th grade parent or a 4th grade parent, you're beginning to talk to your child about what your goals as a family are, right? And that doesn't mean the goal won't change over time. It absolutely might change. The story I always tell is, back when there were maps, you wouldn't try to get into a car in Santa Clara and drive to New York City without a map, right? Now it would be a GPS. You would get in and you would set your GPS and go. That doesn't mean you don't change your GPS settings halfway through. You might choose to go to Chicago instead of New York, right? That's fine. You can change your post-secondary plan at any point, right? You have counselors in middle school and high school to help you with those plans. What we really want to avoid is having no plan, right? Having no plan leads to bad outcomes, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So we want you to think about this. We want you to make a choice all the way back into elementary school, and then every year actively think about, is that still my plan or is that not my plan? And then are the courses I'm taking setting me up for success in that plan, right? Because it's one thing to say this is the outcome I want. It's another to be actively working towards that. And we want to work on actively working towards whatever our outcome is. So we're going to talk a little bit about A to G requirements tonight, just because if you complete the A to G requirements, which are college entrance requirements for California State University or University of California, you're leaving the most doors open to yourself, right? And again, you might get halfway through your trip and decide, hey, that's not what I want to do. No problem. You can change your plan. But if you close doors to yourself and then get halfway through the plan and go, no, I really do want to go all the way to New York. You know what? You didn't put enough gas in your tank. You can't make it, right? So we want to make sure that everybody understands how the choices you make in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades can affect your long-term plans. Words to know, GPA. That's grade point average, right? And so we talk a lot about grade point average in high school and in middle school. You need to understand what the word rigor means. So in rigor is how hard is your schedule, right? GPA is what your grade point average is. At Wilcox, a third of the senior class is a 4 or higher, right? Rigor, how hard is your schedule? Right? How hard is it? Did you take extra honors classes? It's not how many classes you take. It's how hard are those classes. What a weighted grade is. That's a grade that counts for extra in your GPA. So it makes your GPA higher. And then UC, University of California, and CSU, California State University. Those are the 32 public colleges in the state of California where the vast majority of our students apply to. You know, the students that apply to 4-year, that's where a lot of their applications go. So those are things that you need to start thinking about as you prepare for middle school, which is going to lead to high school. Middle school is foundational to what you're going to do in high school, mostly in math, because math is going to affect math, science, computer science, all kinds of different subjects. Like I always think like English and history go together, right? And then math and science go together. So we've got to have a good understanding of both how English affects history and then how math affects science and what that means for me as I go forward in schooling. What does it mean to be college prep, right? And so I think this is something that when I talk to 7th and 8th graders, mostly 8th graders, almost all of them say, hey, I want to go to college at that point. That's all they've ever heard. That's what they want to know. And again, that plan might change in high school, and that's fine. But as long as you have a conscious plan. The University of California, the most rigorous system in California, requires 3 years of math, recommends 4. So all 4 years you're in high school, right? Science requires 2, recommends 3 or 4. Okay, same thing for California State Universities. There are 23 campuses for you. If you look at Wilcox student body, the senior class, 64.9% of students are still taking math, right? And I think that's where you start thinking about, and almost half of them are still taking science. That's where you have to think about, like, when I say I want to go to college, what does that really mean, right? It means I'm going to be taking math all the way through high school, right? And again, you might decide to change your plan, but leave as many doors open as possible, right? And so I like this little slide here where it talks about the minimum requirement is only 15 classes. Well, you need 23 classes to graduate from high school, right? So it's only 15, but most students complete between 23 and 29 year-long courses that go to the UC system. So way, way over what the basic requirement is. And so as you're planning for your child's future, what does that really mean? It means I'm going to be taking math. I'm going to be taking science. I'm going to be taking world language. I'm going to be taking X, Y, and Z. And so as a family, I want you to think about, like, is that for me? Right? And then what's that mean in middle school? It means I need to do well in my math. Right? This is my last slide. And what it says to me is what matters is where you finish. So most of our students are, well, I would say almost all of our students are either in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And we have parents all the time that are like, oh, I have to get advanced. I have to get advanced. Right? But what I think it's important is where you finish, not where you start. And I want you to look at, even if you start in Algebra 1, you're still in Trigs or Stats as a senior, which is advanced math. And so what you do in Math 6, Math 7, and Math 8 is really going to affect your ability to be successful in Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, which is the minimum for college prep, and then Trigs or Stats, right? And you can see where the other ones go. As a minimum in high school, you're going to take Algebra 1 and basically Geometry to graduate. Those aren't easy classes for some students. But if you really work hard on Math 6, 7, and 8, those classes will be easier for you. And then for college, the minimum is Algebra 2. And then what's recommended is you take even more. We want to make sure you're taking math as a senior if you consider yourself college prep. Thank you very much.
There are many ways to support students at home. One way to support your child at home is to ask questions about school or math to show you care. These questions are some alternatives of asking, how was your day, when you more than likely get a blank stare or a simple good. The questions are intended to get a glimpse of not only what your child is learning, but more importantly, if and how they're applying their learning. When could use the ideas you learned today shows how math concepts can be used in everyday life or connect them to other subjects they're learning about. Questions like, what good ideas do you have today, can also validate what they're thinking or show what misconceptions they have. What did you struggle with, or what questions do you have about today's work, can open up a conversation, can help them grow their learning. There are also questions about homework that you can use. And when it comes to homework, teachers don't expect you to have the knowledge of each class that your child takes. But having discussions around school or math shows that you're supporting your child and that you value them. When helping your child with homework, it's less about teaching the procedures of math, but more about your child being able to think critically, knowing what they're doing and why they're doing something. We want students to have a conceptual understanding of math, not just to know the procedures. So you're not expected to be able to do their math homework or understand every concept, but rather asking some of the questions on this page can help support them. And hopefully you can teach them to advocate for themselves as well. If they are not able to understand a concept or assignment, just have them go talk to their teacher or get some help or write the questions down to ask in class the next day. We want students not only to just get their homework done, but understand what they are doing. The teachers are there to support your child, and they're there to help them. And of course, if you consistently notice a problem and it seems like your child is not advocating for themselves, please feel free to email their teachers so your child gets the support they need. So these are some questions you can ask for during homework. And again, we don't expect you to know how to do every assignment, but asking those questions show your child that you care.